Hello, everybody, and welcome to the video. Yeah, today we're gonna do some English, yeah, so let me get my PowerPoint on the screen. So, just again, everybody, hello, yeah, welcome to the lesson on active and passive voice. My name is Rana van Rensburg, and today we are going to break down one of the most important concepts in English grammar. Okay, so by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to identify active and passive voice, convert sentences between the two forms, and understand when and why to use each voice effectively. Okay, we'll also do some fun practice activities, so be sure to follow along and let's get started. Okay, so the introduction, why voice matters. Okay, so have you ever heard a sentence like, the cake was eaten by John, and thought it sounded a little different from John ate the cake? These two sentences means the same thing, but they are structured differently. This difference is called voice in grammar. Okay, so but why does this matter though? Well, the way they structure our sentence can affect how clear and direct our writing is. If we also use passive voice too much, our writing can become weirdly or vague. On the other hand, using passive voice in the right situations can help emphasize important information. So let's dive a bit deeper um, into active and passive voice and see how they work. Okay, so what is active voice? Let's start with active voice. This is the default way we construct sentences in English. Now, let's look a bit at the definition here. The definition is the subject performs the action. For example, the cat uh, chases the mouse. Okay, so the formula we will be using here to identify the active voice would be subject plus verb plus object. Okay, another example that we can use is the teacher explains the lesson clearly, or I wrote a letter to my friend. Okay, so in each of these examples, the subject, which is, let's say, the cat, the teacher, and I, is performing an action. Okay, so there we go. Then from here, we can move on to the passive voice. So, what is the passive voice, teacher? You're probably asking yourself now. Now, okay, this is when the focus on the sentence shifts from the subject to the object. Okay, so the definition here would be the object becomes the subject. For example, the mouse was chased by the cat. Okay, so the formula that we will be using here is object plus to be plus past participle plus by plus subject. Okay. A simple example that we can use here would be the mouse. Like I said, the mouse was chased by the cat. The lesson is explained by the teacher, and a letter was written by me. Okay. Um, Notice how in each case the emphasis is now on the receiver of the action instead of the doer. Yeah. Okay. So here we have the subject plus verb plus object in the active voice, and in the passive voice we have the object to be past participle by and plus subject. Okay. So we are going to move on to why use passive voice. Okay. Now, you might be wondering, why would we use passive voice? There are a few important reasons. So, number one would be to emphasize the action instead of the subject. So, a new law as passed yesterday, or in the sentence, the action, okay? passing the law is more important than who did it. Okay, you understand that? Okay, then next up, we're going to be true when the subject is unknown and or unimportant. So a example here would be a mistake was made. So for this case, in this case, we don't know who made the mistake, or it's not relevant. Okay. So number 3 would be in scientific or formal writing. So an example for this would be the experiment was conducted under controlled conditions. Now, the passive voice is commonly used in research because the focus is on the process and not the researcher. Okay, so now let's look at the active versus passive voice. Okay, so I made a nice block here. I hope you all can see there's an invisible line here. But yeah, let's continue. Let's compare the active and passive voice side by side. So she wrote a book would be the active voice. Then the passive voice of this would be a book was written by her. So again, you can see the subject here is first. She wrote the book. And here at the passive voice side, you can see that the object is made more of the main idea. Okay, so a book was written by her. Again, the chef cooked the meal, and then the meal was cooked by the chef. Okay. Notice the differences. In passive voice, the sentences are usually longer as well, and sometimes less direct. This is why active voice is often preferred in everyday writing. I mean, imagine for yourselves, when you write, you don't want to write all the way out and every single word. You want to write the shortest way possible, don't you? So this is why it is preferred. And yeah, okay. So we are going to move on to number 7 here. That would be change active to passive. Now, this is very important. How do we change the active to the passive? Okay, so number 1 would be identify the subject, verb, and object. So an example would be if I would give you Tom cleared the classroom. The subject would be Tom. The verb would be cleaned, and object would be the classroom. Okay. Number 2 would be to move the object to the subject position. So the classroom. Okay. And number 3 would be use to be. And this would be the classroom was clean. And then number 4 would be optionally add by plus the original subject. So the classroom was cleaned by Tom. Okay, the process works for most verbs in the past, present, or future tense. Next up, we have when to avoid passive voice. So passive voice isn't always the best choice. Here are 3 situations where you should avoid it. So when it makes sentences too wordy, so an example of this would be a passive voice would be a decision was made by the manager, and an active voice here would be the manager made a decision. Okay, so when it's too wordy. So number 2 would be when it makes sentences vague. So passive would be mistakes were made, okay, but by who? So it's a bit vague because it's not saying exactly by who. Okay, and active would be we made mistakes. Okay, then number 3, the last one would be when it's unnecessary. Passive would be the reports was read by me. and active, I read the report. Okay, active voice is usually clearer and easier to understand. Again, active voice is usually shorter and it is just easy in general. Okay, then the last one, my last summary. Okay, so that's a wrap. And yeah, I hope that you've learned how to use the active and passive voice correctly. And yeah, I would like you to keep practicing so that it feels natural. And yeah, I just feel happy that you watched, and I really hope that you learned something. So if you do not understand anything, please contact me, and I'll be happy to help. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.